perhaps, Mr Mundell, if I could begin with you. A lot has been spoken about personalities.
Yes.
And this committee was informed just before we moved into the public session that one of those personalities involved, Nicola Sturgeon, contacted the committee late last week to postpone her appearance next Monday. So she is someone we will definitely want to hear from, but due to reasons certainly out with our control, she won't be attending next Monday. However, you served in Parliament with her from 1999. When you were both in opposition, you would have viewed her from Westminster when she entered government as a minister, and she was the first minister during your entire time, your initial period as Secretary of State for Scotland. She's the only First Minister you would have dealt with. I think that's correct. So how did you view your relationship with Nicola Sturgeon, and how did things change, if at all, during her time in office and your time in office?
I hope that she will give evidence to the committee, because obviously she's been a very significant part.
Just for clarity, I mean, that was discussed in a private session, and I would have hoped that the confidence of that conversation would have been maintained. But just for the record, that Ms has agreed that she will come to this committee when she becomes available to this.
In fairness, that wasn't confidential, and I think it certainly would have been public next Monday when there was an empty chair. So I don't think we're breaking any confidences to say that, but perhaps Mr Mundell could continue.
In any event, I think it's very important that she does attend, because she has a lot to contribute to this discussion and debate, and probably contrary to some of our respective contributions. I found initially that she was a very professional person to deal with, and that we could do business. And I gave the example of the discretionary housing payments, and in relation to the so-called bedroom tax. I had attended I always attend a number of events with her, and in those situations, she was always very professional, and we worked respectfully, I think, together. I think post-Brexit, we did see a significant change. I think we saw this period of Scottish exceptionalism develop, so that everything had to be different and dealt with differently in Scotland. We had a period of, I think, obstruction really in relation to the Brexit decision and implementing Brexit, and generally an environment of just making things as difficult as possible for the UK government. Now, I don't dispute that as a politician you may wish to do those things, but it became an almost entirely political environment rather than one that was focused on outcomes, and certainly in my view, outcomes that would benefit people in Scotland.
I think for our inquiry, it's just to reiterate, you're saying that there was a change, got progressively worse.
Became progressively more challenging to deal with the First Minister.
And would you say then that the revelation during the COVID inquiry, when it met in Scotland, that there was discussions between Nicola Sturgeon and her chief advisor Liz Lloyd, who suggested that they have a good old-fashioned rammy with the UK government? Is that indicative of what you were seeing after that period?
Well, I was certainly witness on a couple of occasions to rammies that involved the UK government. Without, I think it, as Christine Jardine said, I mean, it was all playing into a sort of, UK government bad, Scottish government good narrative, rather than actually, well, what are we actually trying to do here? What is the outcome, we want to achieve? I mean, in relation to Brexit, I held a meeting the day after the referendum with Fiona Hislop, who was then the person, the EU or European spokesman in the Scottish Government, where we had a discussion about whether it would be possible to move forward on a constructive basis. And at that meeting, I was rather hopeful that that might be possible. But of course, simultaneously, Nicola Sturgeon was appearing in a press conference to announce that we needed independence to defeat the outcome of the Brexit referendum. So, I mean, almost from that first day, the politics overwhelmed the situation.
And just finally ask about these personalities. You mentioned earlier that you had good relations with John Swinney, but I noted down you said that Mike Russell, during a number of the discussions you had, didn't have the authority. So was this Scottish Government ministers coming in, negotiating with UK Government ministers and potentially agreeing in principle, but then going back to the First Minister and not being able to progress what had been agreed?
That was my impression, because we had previously proceeded where ministers came with a remit and something was agreed. We moved forward those round because there were obviously ministers there from Wales, sometimes ministers, sometimes officials from Northern Ireland. And we did expect these discussions to be a decision-making forum. But it certainly, the impression was given that the decision maker in relation to Scotland was not in the room, but back in Edinburgh.
And you were discussing earlier with Sally Ann Hart about a power grab and the fact that there couldn't be a power grab, obviously, with these legislation and such like authority never lying in Scotland, but in some of the transfer of powers from the UK government and this Parliament to the Scottish government and the Scottish Parliament, not all of those powers certainly immediately were taken up. Did you find it strange that in some cases powers asked for, requested and transferred were then not fully utilised? I'm thinking around social security, when the Scottish Government weren't able to get the procedures in place to deal with these additional powers.
Those powers, of course, came with the Scotland Act 2016 social security powers. By the time that situation unfolded, no, I wasn't surprised, because I had been, for example, in a meeting where there was a rammy about that the Scottish Government must today be transferred the powers for personal independence payments, and that was in 2017, 2018, and now we're still we're still waiting essentially for that whole system to evolve. So there was very much at that time, because of the politics, a demand: we must have this now, we must do this right now, we're ready to do this. But as events unfolded, it became clear that there wasn't either the capacity, the will, the priority to do those things. So they had really been noise rather than a determination to take it forward.
Before I come